Pellin. The Pellin Credo Ground Rules for the Peter Fleming Forum. The ground rules in the Pellin Credo are designed to support a safe, nourishing environment. We ask that you come to the meeting with a clear head, free of the influence of drink and drugs. In any Pellin setting, you keep control of the pace and depth of your sharing. You may pass or say no to any suggestion. Your no will be accepted and not judged or analyzed. No means no. Even though the meetings are recorded, we ask that people respect the confidentiality of those present and do not share anything heard outside the meeting. In Pellin work, we have a strict no gossip rule. No gossip means we do not talk about anyone who is not present, even in a pleasant way.
And I'll just remind you of the Zoom etiquette. If you need to leave your screen, just stop the video and keep an eye on only being unmuted when you're going to speak. Okay, that's it. I will stop the share and make Cynthia the host just for safety's sake.
Well, let's do our locations. I'm Peter and I'm in Norfolk in England. Cynthia?
I'm Cynthia and I am in Kankakee, Illinois.
Nikki?
I'm Nikki, I'm in Wimbledon, London.
Mary?
Oh, I'm not muted. I'm Mary, I'm in Rosarito Beach, Mexico.
Elizabeth?
I'm Elizabeth. I'm in Eugene, Oregon.
Stacy?
I'm Stacy. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Victor?
I'm Vic. I'm in Abbotsford, British Columbia, Canada. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Stacy?
I'm Stacy.
You
did Stacy, and it's Johnny and Victoria next.
Oh, sorry, Johnny.
Hello, Johnny Avila here, Los Angeles, California.
Victoria?
I'm Victoria. I'm in Paris, France.
Okay. What we're going to talk about today in this series that's connecting the different tools is staying with feelings of accomplishment, FOAs, as we often like to call them, because they're so fundamental. They're fundamental to both physical and mental health. If we don't get feelings of accomplishment, the attraction to hurt, to go back then into that tool, can just run riot. And that's true of little ones stuck at home because they can't go out to play and they're not getting any feelings of accomplishment. So they're going to be impossible to, the elderly whose kids are a long way away and they don't go to work anymore. So feelings of accomplishment can be hard to find. As again, it's probably the case that some little ones have the common sense to find a new game to play rather than just irritate mommy and daddy. And some elderly people know that when they're tired from work and the kids have flown and that nest is empty, they've got to put something in place. And often I like to say that what we do with contribution training in the Pellin tools is tell people that which they already know, but provide a framework around it, a structure around it, so people's intuitive knowledge or their knowledge of common sense has more security because it's set in a theoretical framework. And we don't run away from common sense. And, you know, Dave used to say that the need for feelings of accomplishment is the most important need we have. And I want to combine that today with this, which you'll remember is about the life forces. And the yellow circle is the caring life force. The red circle is the performance life force. The green circle is the material life force. And these, and again, this is a tool. It's a really sort of simple little gadget that is surprisingly sophisticated and surprisingly applicable to a lot of situations. And what we're saying about it, it is a tool, and the mix of these three forces, caring, performance, and material, will be unique with each of us. And we're not saying within this that there's any predetermination of an ideal mix. It's not the case that we would all be better off if we all had an equal mix of three, because that would cut out Michelangelo as someone to admire, the Renaissance artist, because his was sort of, in my view, get this spinning around. It was sort of like that, okay? Maybe even more so. Sort of like that. Now, the caring life force was really squeezed. Friendships, people, lovers, even family, in a certain sense, simply weren't that important to him. They weren't very much on the radar. The performance life force, his creativity, his confidence in his creativity, you know, was simply huge. Huge from the time he was a kid, when he sort of would wander off to the marble quarry and had a cousin there, so when the cousin gave him his own little hammer and chisel, so he'd play. And 80 years later, he was still playing with the last sculptures of his life. No, he had enough material life force to make sure the paints were there, to make sure he got the commissions, to make sure the marble arrived on time. And it was the right marble. So, you know, I used Michelangelo as an example just to point out that that was a hugely successful life with his own unique combinations of these life forces. And you can find that elsewhere. To be called divine in your own time, as he was, is sort of pretty much performance life force, okay? Pretty much performance life force. And the great religious leaders have an enormous amount of performance life force. You know, some of them, because sort of hardly any material life force. And a lot of caring life force, but certainly a predominance of performance life force. You know, to believe. You know, that in a sense is sort of the great religious leaders. You know, to believe that you have a direct line to God is a pretty confident stance in life. And I don't want to be disrespectful or sacrilegious about that. But, you know, to say, you know, I am the person who can save my tribe or save humanity because I have a direct line to God. Yeah, it is a rather heightened sense of self-worth, to put it in our terms. And there's, you know, I do not want to be disrespectful about that, because the great political leaders are something similar to that. Certainly Abraham Lincoln, you know, had enormous performance life force. In some ways, it's sort of, because in the performance life force, you can convince others that you're coming from the caring life force. You can convince others that they come first. But in fact, if you look into someone like Lincoln's life, which of course is documented almost like no other, you can see, you know, no, his personal relationships were there, they were strong, sort of point removed compared with this enormous, risk-taking creativity and putting on a performance the way we talk about the life forces. It was sort of just there in him, there in him. However, the greatness of the political leaders like that, even if the caring life force, particularly in terms of their political life, their working life, is not very great, it will be there and it will be fierce, okay? It won't be very much, but it will absolutely always put the humanity into situations. And that within that lies their greatness. When you think of other people, Hitler, the caring life force was almost, you know, just didn't exist. You know, didn't exist in his last hours. And the Second World War was coming to its end. And yeah, he didn't care what happened to the German people. He just, you know, didn't care. If they couldn't follow me the way they should have followed me, well, they deserved to die. All of them. You know, that's rather, and that's the perversion of the performance life force, which, you know, has within it glory and also evil. It's darker than the other two. Just to go over the other two briefly.
Peter, can I just come in here? I was just sitting here, having been rather politicized by recent events, I was thinking, hey, Peter, you used 3 examples of men. Can we throw in a woman? Like I was thinking, what about Florence Nightingale? I don't know much about her life, but maybe she had like a real lot of caring life force to as a woman of privilege to go into such horrendous conditions. Maybe there's a better example.
Well,
Unequal
no, and that's you know, I appreciate that. Well, the great figures in the American civil rights movement who do not get, Rosa Parks gets the press, okay, but the others tend not to, and they were there. You know, and I can't roll the names off my tongue, okay? So it sort of says, but if you look deeply into the civil rights movement, women were enormously powerful. And Florence Nightingale, I think she's a good case in point. My reading of her is she had enough caring life force to provide the motivation, but she was, you know, she was sort of like that, you know. No one was going to stand in her way. You know, and she would stand up to politicians or generals, who of course were all men. You absolutely stand up to them.
I didn't know that about her, but I was thinking to myself, well, she must have had a lot of material life force, because the whole business of organizing the nurses and getting the supplies and getting to the places and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's why I put it that way.
Yeah.
You know, huge material life force. But she had to be organized. If she wasn't organized, they died. So,
thank you.
Any other questions? I'm really ambitious about this. I have never, as I said other times here, it was developed by a friend and student of mine who was a Mother Superior in a convent in central London. And she studied with me and came up with this. And I want to get it professionally made. But, you know, my configuration or my mix of them, at the moment is sort of pretty much that. I struggle with material life force. And that's the part of me that hasn't had these made professionally. At the moment, I've got a lot of performance life force going on because I'm developing new and ambitious programs. And I lean a bit too heavily on the caring life force. You know, I'll get people to like me, and in terms of Pellin, the School of Thought, in my own family, and I need to step up to the plate a bit more and really expand the, you know, expand the material life force out like that. You know, I need to be organized. And that includes for my grandkids, you know. Because, you know, I've got the caring life force. And I'm the one in the family who's got all the photographs. And I thought, because I've got 11 grandkids, and if I could be regularly sending them something that was their mum and dad, their mum or dad when their mum or dad was a child. They love that, you know. So I've got ambitions about being creative for my grandkids. 9 of the 11 live in Canada, not in England, but I don't get organized. And for me, it's almost as simple as don't get organized, you know. And within the material life force, there is a simplicity. You know, there is a simplicity of, okay, get organized. Are the papers filed? Is the right stuff in the freezer? You know, we're not going to run out of toilet paper or paper towels. And within, one way you can get a feel for the material life force, everything in the material life force, one way or another can has numbers attached to it, okay? You know, it's rolls of, how many rolls of paper towels, or, you know, well, even the way I said it then, how many grandkids? You can always put numbers on something in the material life force. And, you know, those of us who mainly come from the caring life force, or to use a phrase, are even addicted to the caring life force. Well, you know, don't tell me about the numbers. How do you feel about me? Okay. I mean, that's, you know, do you know how this affects my feelings? Or what are your feelings about this? And, you know, the little broad
Peter?
brush statement I make about that, if we have, and some of you have heard this before, we have to get from point A to point B. In the material life force, someone will find out, okay, what's the shortest and easiest journey? And how long will it take? That's simple. A to B. Shortest
Peter?
journey. Yeah.
Self-awareness is reflecting on your feelings, but self-reflection is reflecting on your behavior.
And that's where both of those can be brought into this. Because self-reflecting in the material life force would be, how much is it going to cost, and do we have security? And the self-awareness in the material life force would be, what are my needs for that security? What are my needs, which I do have. You know, I have my freezer chock-a-block full. You know, I'm on a serious lockdown. You know, I've organized the supermarket to deliver. But the self-awareness, I need the feeling that that's there, okay? Now, the self-awareness and the self-reflection, because they're terrific for, point of view. Thank you. In the performance life force, now that's where it really gets interesting, okay? Okay, there's self-awareness. I'm so powerful I could be the president of the country. Or, you know, a child, I could be the best baseball player in the world. And the child can feel that when they're playing. You know, they will imagine they are that other person. And if you take that into writing poetry or writing plays or being an actor, the self-awareness within the performance life force has to have a real self-importance to it. And you can see, I mean, in the current leader of the home of the brave and the land of the free, if you could compare that person with the previous person who occupied that job. Yeah, they both had a awareness, self-awareness, that they could achieve great power. In terms of my little device, you know, one had, you know, opened his mouth and look at him, you know, had, even though he's a politician, had a whole whack of caring life force. You know, whether it's a little boy who wants to touch his hair or leaning into the mic and singing Amazing Grace, you know, the caring life force almost never left him, even though he's a consummate, self-centered, you know, politician. But the other guy, the caring life force almost doesn't exist at all. You know, maybe a bit for his kids or something, but who knows? And then the self-reflection, self-awareness and self-reflection in the caring life force is our need for love and our need for acceptance about just who we are. You know, it doesn't matter if I perform, it doesn't matter if, yeah, it's in the movie Shriek, isn't it? If I've got it right, where at the end, he says, well, you know, you are a beautiful princess, so that will be your life. And she says, well, no, I won't go there because I love you. I mean, that's caring life force. It's a wonderful moment of caring life force. Sometimes we should compile bits of films and we could all have our favorite bit. And, you know, the self-awareness of, you know, okay, what love and acceptance do I need? And then the self-reflection of how can I get that? Yeah, Cynthia.
Yes, I have a question. Can somebody have like an innate preference for one of the life source or like it being in the life source, but something bad happens to it and then it gets squeezed? Is that something that can happen? That you're sort of supposed to be profound at one, but you end up losing it because something happens bad, or?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you remember the work on transparency, okay? Yeah, my, you know, 4 divorces have sort of battered my caring life force, okay? And that's where I guess I say, you know, I want to be ambitious, I want my work, I want to expand my performance life force, get on top of my material life force. I can take the caring life force for granted. And then dig a little bit deeper in that in terms of the concept of Stacey was saying about self-awareness, self-reflection. Yeah, okay, what do I need in that? How has my caring life force been battered about? Well, someone, you know, who starts off wanting to be the great baseball player or a concert pianist or a rock star, and it doesn't work out. Yeah, Mary.
Well, I was just going to say, if you remember a few weeks ago, I questioned Peter, how did you know I had a lot of caring life force? You know, I was so frozen, I wasn't feeling it. I was trying to write poetry when boyfriends rejected me to assuage the pain. So that was an example of what you're talking about, Cynthia, that the caring life force became so incredibly painful to me with rejection from school peers and then rejections from boyfriends that I froze and losing my dad, the presence of my dad, So I squeezed it out of existence, but it peeped out to Peter, thank God. And then I resuscitated it. But I guess in some way I still had a lot of caring life force. I just couldn't feel it. I couldn't express it. I was self-centered and quite competitive and cold to other people. I was really trying to get my performance life force to work for me to cope with life. So I think that's what Cynthia was talking about.
Mm. And they'll also change over time. And again, it's a tool, it's not a formula. When I'm teaching it, it's sort of broad brush stroke, sorry, to get it across. But it's a tool that can handle all sorts of differences. So
When I was little,
yeah.
When I was little, I was very into politics. I would tell my parents how to vote at age 10. From 10 to 18, I had 4 votes because I told my grandparents how to vote, and I told my mother how to vote, and my mother and father how to vote. So I had a very liberal vote. The Democrats got 4 more votes because of me. And when I turned 18 and took political science, I learned that it's better to tell them both sides and let them vote their own conscience.
Okay.
Thought never occurred to me until 18 when I met that professor. And you mean they have a choice?
Yeah.
I only told them one side, my side, so they'd vote my way.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be president. I wanted to be president of the United States, and then I took political science when I realized, this isn't for me.
Okay. Elizabeth?
Well, I've actually been thinking about the life forces and feelings of accomplishment since Sunday, I think, when you were talking about the feelings of accomplishment from demonstrations and things like that, and how I have never in my life felt a feeling of accomplishment from a political protest. Never once. Or at least not marching in one. However, because of that intense material life force I've got, I felt a lot of feelings of accomplishment showing up with a bag of supplies, blister pads, sunscreen, ibuprofen, etc., and handing it over to the organizers. And I don't have to stand up in there because that does nothing for me. But to be able to provide some of the material for them to keep going on is hugely satisfying.
And that's why I think the tool of feeling, one of the claims I make about the Pellin tools, they can be very accurate. They can be very accurate, very precise, okay? And once you get particularly the tool of feelings of accomplishment, and this is, so much David Pellin's awesome originality. Once you get almost a feel for feelings of accomplishment, you can sort of see it. Yeah, they are not there, okay? And this has got a lot of application. Now, it doesn't mean that, say, in your situation, turning up to the demonstration or getting other people to come is not an accomplishment. But if the feelings of accomplishment aren't there, we do need to have that self-awareness. And it's got a lot of applications. One particular application of the combination of feelings of accomplishment and the pendulum is postnatal depression. You know, I've got 2 daughters, 2 sons, 9 grandchildren, 11 grandchildren, as I said. And so I've never experienced it, you know. I'm a man. But, you know, I don't love my baby. What's wrong with me? And we come along and say, it's okay. You know, you're going to be a great mom. I don't, in my view, and again, I can't know, giving birth is, I think, the highest high in the world. So there's going to be a low following it. And you can accomplish a great deal. You can be a good parent, even if at a particular time you don't feel love of your kids or your kid boy or something. That's all right. Get your feelings of accomplishment somewhere else. And at times, almost the other side of that coin, the parent who gets all their feelings of accomplishment from the children is not doing the children a service. You know, after the age of 3 years and 2 months, you know, totally arbitrary. You know, the children need to feel that mummy and daddy have another life. And their life is not just me. Part of growing up, part of becoming a person. So I'm just saying there are particular applications of these tools. But if, as a parent, someone feels they're not close enough to their kids and they're, you know, they're a world famous soccer player, and that's their configuration, then hey, for the kids, I better expand my caring life force, and I better get some feelings of accomplishment in the caring life force. And the Pellin approach is not to bring that thing immediately into the issues around the children and what sort of a father I am, but find other ways to explore the caring life force and then have a caring life force to bring into the children. So, you know, my hypothetical, okay, you know, I know that rookie kid's having a hard time in the locker room. You know, I'll befriend him a bit. Yeah, I'll look after him a bit. And seeing it consciously as expanding the caring life force, then that particular person got more take home. So one of the things is about the life forces is that they are a source of particular feelings of accomplishment. So if my material life force is weak, squeezed out, you know, 2 things can happen. One, I really don't get that many feelings of accomplishment out of the material life force. But my material life, because my feelings of accomplishment have always been elsewhere. So what do I do about that? Well, then, how do I do the material life force activities but get feelings of accomplishment out of them? And it's a sort of quite a ways down this course. And just to tell you, Vic, David had a concept he called the triangle. And I haven't quite been able, over the years, I haven't quite been able to make that work. But I want to claim it back. And what, just to say very briefly, what that's about is how do we set goals? How do we reach goals? And how do we assess goals so we find out they're good for us? It's another way of looking at feelings of accomplishment.
Yeah, it's very interesting. As I was sitting there listening, before you said anything about the triangle, I was thinking, I was trying to connect what you were saying about feelings of accomplishment and the life force. I was trying to connect that with rejected effort and accepted effort.
Exactly.
And I was trying to make that connection, and I didn't quite make them connection. Then you've mentioned the triangle, which is really, really, really interesting to me. Just to, briefly share a little experience, David taught this, the 3 points of a triangle. Effort is 1 point towards a goal, and that results in change. And he said, if you go through that triangle again and again, he said that was his understanding of happiness. And just to share a little bit of a quick anecdote with you, I took the course of lectures, I think twice with David, and maybe roughly in between. I was a jeweler's mechanic. I worked in my dad's jewelry shop. And so what I did was I went and made a bunch of little triangles out of, I guess, copper, and polished them. And then I put them in, well, if you took this is a rectangle, but in a round round sort of can of epoxy or something like that. So I put them in that, and then I put a pen. So I made a pen holder with a triangle in the middle. And I presented one to David, and boy, the feeling of accomplishment and the recognition I got. I mean, I gave this to David, and he said this was really special, and I was really it really touched me. So I thought I'd share that with you. Yeah, I think the business of accepted effort and rejected effort, and the triangle is very significant. All this is always touching me. Thanks.
It's interesting that you said that, Victor, because I was thinking the same thing. I just wrote down, thinking of a future topic. I was thinking, combined connection series. I was thinking, feelings of accomplishment and goal setting, or feelings of accomplishment and accepted and rejected actions. Because what I was thinking about was, when you have my material life force is the least strong of my three. And over the last 3 years, I've been involved in a startup, and I've kept it going on not very much money. And I've raised money for it, and I've learned about business, and I've got more efficient, and I did all these things for Pellin, all expanding my weakest life force. What I'm going for that is, if you can keep your goals fairly modest when you're trying to work with something that's not your strongest point, then the feeling of accomplishment is huge, out of proportion to the, we'll just take the example of, I struggled with MailChimp 4 different times, and then Peter found Send in Blue, and in 2 hours I'd done a newsletter for Pellin using the program Peter found, and I was over the moon, because I'd conquered this technology, and where I'd had all these feelings of, I'm going to keep going, even though I cannot fathom MailChimp out. We're going to have a newsletter, and then we finally did. And feelings of accomplishment are so enhanced by understanding sensible goal setting. Because if you say, okay, I'm really bad, if I said about the fact I'm not very tidy, I'm really bad at being tidy, so I'm going to make sure I clean everything today, and I'm going to have a tidy house and papers tomorrow, and I'm going to keep it like that for the rest of my life. Yeah, very likely.
So what's really interesting there is, David made and I again have these moments of remembering being in there and hearing it, but I remember him saying the point that, and he said, too many people are goal oriented. And what's significant about him saying that is that, the big positive attitude books and all of the, there was this big, movement of, you got to have set goals, right? And to hear this person say this contra, too many people are goal oriented. You need to be direction oriented. And he said, when you reach a goal, that's just a point on the direction. Now you look over the hill and see the next one. And that was significant because it was very much in vogue at the time. Peter will remember this, this whole business of goal setting. You have to set a goal. And if you don't achieve a goal, well, you're no good. And of course you can beat yourself up because you haven't reached your goals. But he taught that, you need to be direction oriented. I think that was significant.
Johnny. Oh, sorry, Elizabeth.
Oh, if Julie has something to say. Then...
No, you go.
Okay. Well, I was thinking, Victor, that's really, really interesting because the goal orientation is still overwhelmingly the way the business world works. And it's creating a situation that is grinding workers down. Because the goal is binary. You achieve it or you don't. And so they set very ambitious goals, and most of your workforce is failing most of the time. And what does that do to feelings of accomplishment? And what does that do to their motivation to do their best for the company? And when it's direction oriented, then any improvement a worker makes is a feeling of accomplishment, and they want to keep going and they want to keep doing their best. And so that's something that really is still very broken about the business world. So I find that fascinating.
No, I think he really had something about that. And just to define those two terms that are around here, David talked about accepted efforts, and this part is really simple. Accepted efforts are things we enjoy doing. We are enjoying the activity in which we are engaged. That's the accepted effort. Okay, time passes quickly, even though we're putting out energy. The fact we're in the accepted effort means we're creating energy while we're putting energy out. And accepted effort is really simple. It's stuff we like doing. And then there's a rejected effort. And the rejected effort is that which one way or another, whether it's out of a choice or our responsibilities or something obligation to somebody else, the rejected effort is simply that which we do not like doing. And I mean, David was very, it was both very clear and he put a lot of emotions into his teaching. And he called the rejected effort, which are simply things we have to do, but we can't find a way to enjoy doing them. He called it the killer of the soul. Okay. I mean, really strongly. And then he also made, and this was part of what he called a triangle. And I haven't quite been able to make that work, but I'm in the process of getting back to it. And this forum will be one of the places I will. So I'm just presenting part of it. And then he came along and said, there's no such thing as a lazy person. There's just someone who hasn't found their accepted effort, okay? So it's quite a lovely statement. And, accepted effort is almost synonymous with feelings of accomplishment. It's just coming at it from a slightly different angle. But just to, put the whole field of work into a different concept. Someone asked Freud once how he would describe a happy person or a full, and he'd say, someone who is fulfilled in love and work, and then he forgot about work. David Pellin, because particularly this time of my life and been around the material for a long time, I feel David Pellin's material is simply superior to Freud's, because there's a big place in it for work. There's a big, there's a big place in it for money, because we're saying that in a level of values or society, these three life forces are of equal importance. One is not superior to another. It's not a hierarchy. It's a continuum. And we need all three. And, we can certainly see the moment that I saw one description of the demonstrations as someone described them as poetic rage. And I don't know if you know, but I've started a whole series, and it was Mary's first idea, that are going to be on my Facebook page on Pellin and politics, and Pellin and what's happening in the political sphere right now. That's performance life force. That's performance life force changing the world. But then when the solutions come in, when someone's actually bringing about the change, they're going to be tough-minded people who've got a preponderance of material life force. Someone who can, write the protocols and then measure them, and how many, and can make how many. How many black men and women, boys and girls, have been shot by police. That's a figure. The material life force, you can put numbers on anything, and then you make the numbers count. And for all the poetic rage, we also need the number crunchers, and also need the number crunchers because there's got to be 50% plus one in November, for sure. So, one of the things that I feel we have in the life forces, because at times I think what this is a sort of, on one level, is a certain plea for tolerance, okay? Tolerate someone who's not very emotional, fairly cold, and is mainly into money, or someone who's mainly into money and making sure the bills are paid, and the kids' college is secure, and our retirement is secure. Yeah, but from that point of view, understand someone else who, where everything has to be emotions and emotional understanding. Yeah, Mary.
I just wanted to give a little example of this in the world of psychotherapy, where people are kind of fond of trying to puzzle out human beings around them in terms of diagnosis, and certain things get popularized. So I had a friend of mine tell me that she wasn't with her boyfriend anymore because she thought he was just got too Aspergery. And I'd only met him about twice. For those of you who might not know, that's related to autism. And I said, well, you know what, you might find the teaching about the material life force interesting, because what she was really saying was he didn't engage in really deep caring life force conversation, interminable conversations, and therefore she put a label on him. And anyway, that's the end of the story, really. Sorry, I'm going a bit vague, but it's just like, I thought really hard about it because I'd met him and I thought, I think he's just got a lot of material life force. So he doesn't match her level of wanting to talk things over like us caring types do.
Yeah, and again, it's a plea for tolerance. And in a relationship, they can be tools that can really help people in a marriage understand the difficulties they're having. Because it's not blame. Well, you don't care about money. We're coming along and saying, no, I've just got a lot of caring life for. And there's something very characteristic about this. And in that situation, in the situation of people in a long-term relationship, you can't use this without looking at without the positive emerging. Okay, so someone's all into money, 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 and the others are sort of squeezed, and that's the fight. But look what the money's providing in terms of a security for the rest of it. You know, be the material life force. I'm a bit scared to say this. It'll be the material life force people who can crunch numbers, who will make sure that enough people vote in November. It won't be the great political speech. It'll be that person that's kind of, have we got that one and that one and that one and that one going to the polls? And that's material life force.
So
yeah.
an example of two brothers with material life force and performance life force are Vincent and his brother, I think it was Theo. And Theo provided for him. He bought him his paints and kept him in and out of asylums. Absolutely. And so that was material life force taking care of the performance life force.
Yeah. And not only did he do that, but he kept all the letters, which are now just an absolute glory. I mean, no one in the history of art has described his art the way that Vincent van Gogh did. In those letters to his brother, they're all letters to his brother.
Yeah.
Totally right. You're totally right about that.
I was thinking about the tolerance thing. My husband and my present business partner, if anyone hurts my feelings, they say, using a very strong swear word, oh, why don't you just tell them to off, right? And because that's so far from a caring life force person's response, even when they're hurt, before I knew about the life forces, it would have created a lot of distance between me and my husband or me and my business partner. You know, what cold people they are. Like, how can you think like that? Whereas because of the life forces, I can just say, okay, you know, that's I don't know if it's material or performance, you know, but it's like not caring life force response to push people away with that kind of aggressive, cut the ties, don't want anything more to do with them. That's what you should always do when you have criticism or upset. So anyway, that's it.
You know, I think it's probably you all know now. When I went into the activity unit, I was really, into planes of consciousness and astral travel and all this stuff, and here's this hard-hitting David Pellin, and to connect with what's being said right now is, it was a stunning moment for me when he started talking about, ultimate purpose and who's an example of ultimate purpose. And on one hand, Gandhi, and of course I could relate to that. I actually was reading Gandhi's books and had his picture and blah, blah, blah. And then on the other hand, Al Jolson, right? And then what? And so here was this person who could do exactly what Peter's been talking about and everybody else has been talking about, and that is that this tolerance, this understanding, mutuality of other people's greatness in different ways, and how significant that is to be able to see the greatness and the value of people that are, you know, very different from our caring lifestyle, for as an example. And so I remember David saying that, and I remember, you know, how it stunned me coming from where I was at the time. And I just think, and I don't want to blab too much here, but I'm just thinking, you know, can you imagine if this had been taught for the last 50 years in high schools? You know, can you imagine, you know, all that? And yeah, it's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, Cynthia.
Well, I get it's strange because it's just first like a couple actually it was like a couple of weeks ago or months ago, Mary was talking about that I have a lot of material left. I said, do I really? I never thought I did, but you know, now thinking about it, I do. And even in that sense of being an astrologer, I love being it, particularly if it shows in a very literal way, when something literally shows up in the stars, in the chart. And one of the things with the life forces I've been working with is, does this show? And I think I've come up with a way. And I looked at Hitler's chart as you were talking and you did that. Interestingly, what I saw with him using the technique I think I came up with, he should have had a strong caring life force, but very literally in the chart, it shows it's corrupted and got thrown in the toilet in a very literal way.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, because that's Stacy.
His half-Jewish stepfather used to beat him regularly.
Yeah.
And that destroyed his caring life force.
Yeah.
As a boy.
Yeah, it was certainly destroyed. Johnny.
Oh, there we go. Hello. Just sitting back listening to a lot of things that are blowing up my brain, which is very interesting. But I just wanted to comment what Cynthia was saying, because I used to be a high school teacher, and I'll explain this at the end of the day, how I made all these connections with you guys, which is very interesting. But I always tell the kids, if you could go back in time, would you kill Hitler? And they always asked me that. And I said, no, I would not kill Hitler.
The kids would ask you that.
Yeah, I based my high school FFA program off of Hitler. And someone goes, you did what? I said, not that. I go, what he did as a genius was smart, okay? But his caring life force was fucking like, right? But what I'm getting at is the reason, this is what I'm trying to get at. I taught history. I said, if you could go back in history, I would go buy Hitler's artwork. Because I got to go to the Museum of Tolerance. I got to go to Germany. You know what I mean? I got to witness it. So I am that person that you say is the Michelangelo inside of a block that I'm chipping my way out. Yeah. But yeah, I do care for my enemy. I care about my enemies so much that I know how to destroy them. And that's my issue of finding balance, because it's like, you come and hurt me, I will just, and that's what I'll do, because I know your heart, I know how you think. But because of that, I love you. And because of that love, I go, if you kill Hitler, you're just going to be another asshole. You know what I mean? For lack of a better term. It's just, but if you taught people compassion and love, because Hitler was, you know, I go, Germany was so suppressed, nobody like gave Germany a chance to rise back up. So, and I know I'm over summarizing and I'm probably like speaking out of turn, but that's just what I would tell my students. I said, because that's not going to, I go, they're like, what? I go, he was an artist. You know, he wasn't even German. So thank you, Stacy.
True confession here. If I went back, I definitely would have shot him.
Shelley,
I would have shot him at the time. Yes.
Do you want to come in, Shelley?
I'm trying to come in.
On anything.
My husband is a history major, so I'll have to talk to him about Hitler. I don't know enough. It's all the books.
No, I wasn't suggesting you come in on that one.
I know. It's just
on the topic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Well, I wonder if I'm trying to remember, like, didn't Carl Jung have like a technique too with 4 things, you know, with the 4 ways you could be? And I try and teach it in a very lay person's way. But what I say is you're always weak in one area. So I don't know if this is true kind of for your, you know, your life forces. And if you are weak in that area, that would be a great place to expand and become more capable. And that would be a good life, I don't know, goal or direction or whatever. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. This is interesting listening to like Mary talking about, you know, expanding her one force that's weaker than the others. Do you think that's sort of an aim?
Yeah, I sort of, you know, I put a lot into developing what I call the methodology of tools, okay? Yes, it would definitely be an aim. But I sort of like the idea that we have these tools and we bring them in when we need them, okay? That people live their lives, and when they're in something like therapy or counseling, working with someone like me or David Pellin, for a time, that can be very big in their lives, right? And the person delivering that service can feel we are very big in their lives. But in fact, people are sort of living their lives. And so these are tools they can learn, have some skills with, know where to find them, and bring them in when they need them. So it's what I'm trying for is something that's, on the one hand, very audacious, because we feel we've got a lot to say. But on the other hand, it has a modesty. You will use as much of this as you want to, okay? You won't use that which I want you to use. And it's the bit, you know, we never take away from a book everything the author's put into the book. Nobody does. We take away a bit that worked for us. I don't know if that makes any, if I can get it across, but it's a rather different approach than saying, well, you have to apply all of your life to this. So I agree completely with Jung, and, you know, about, you know, we have to find a way to strengthen those parts that are weak. But I have a slightly different approach, that the work doesn't take over all of somebody's life. Cynthia.
Just as a trivia, Jung was also an astrologer, and in fact, he would not see a client unless he had actually done their chart. And the 4 parts are actually based on the elements. And when I was first looking to see, I was looking to see if the life forces could be related to the elements, and then it didn't work in charts, and it's related to something else. And the difference is one of the differences is with the elements, you can actually lack an element. You can't actually lack one of the life forces using this. You can have, some are stronger than others, and some are have more problems, but you can't actually lack any of them.
No, it's interesting, the connection to Jung, because it'll emerge more over time. But no, I've got a huge, massive admiration for AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and everything that came out of that. Historically, you could sort of argue without Jung, AA didn't happen, okay? Because one of them went to Jung, one of the founders went to Jung, and I think the way it goes, and he said, I can't help you. And it's probably the case that the person who can help you is someone else who's a drunk. And Jung developed, which is very close to our contribution from Hurt, what he called the wounded healer. So yeah, putting that context in.
Jung called it vital spiritual experiences, what happens to us in AA.
Yeah.
It's a vital spiritual experience that reorganizes the way we think about the world and feel about the world and react to the world.
Yeah.
And he was trying to do that with his patient, but Mr. Rolling, I forget Rolling's first name, he didn't respond because he was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I wanted to just speak to what Shelley said about what Shelley said, and then what Peter said about bringing things in when you need it. You know, when my husband died in 2015, our income died with him. And I wanted to stay in my beautiful house in the mountains in Topanga that costs like something like $16,000 a year just in property taxes. So I had to smarten my material life force up really quickly, or I wouldn't have been able to stay there. And so that was an example of what Peter was saying about the tools when you need them.
Yeah, yeah. Victoria, do you want to come in?
Well, I guess that, well, you use the tools when you need them. This is true. But what I think is a good, you know, feeling to know you have them. Like, it makes me aware of what Peter was saying and what interesting thing that Cynthia just mentioned, because I also, I do astrology and the symbolism in it. And the idea is that you really can like lack an element, but you cannot lack a life force. So, you know, there is always something there to go back to and just develop. I also like the idea, this is what Peter was saying, about the children. The children like when parents have something else outside this parental relationship and love, because it's extremely healing also to hear that. And also the idea that what Mary said that really touched me, that, well, I know I'm a good cook. And so when I cook something well, it's like almost expected of me, taken for granted, and even myself. But if I do something like, well, here I'm very similar to Peter, like something that has to do with being, well, with being in time or saying, meeting the deadline, and I do it, then the feeling of accomplishment is really enormous, because it's like, wow. And in a way, I would like to celebrate small victories as well, like a good cooked meal. Even though I can do it, I would like still to, now starting from today, see it as also like part of my feeling of accomplishment. Not just accomplishment, not just empty accomplishment. Thank you.
So we can do our ND and make it a little bit longer. I can at times run over. Wow. Sorry, I'll say what it is. The first course I ever ran on my own, and David was still alive then, was in Alder Grove, British Columbia. And it was very much Gestalt oriented. I just trained with the Gestalt Institute, and partly I trained with the great Fritz Perl. So it was based on, the following I had was based on Gestalt, because Gestalt was very, and Fritz Perl were very, very fashionable at that time. Anyway, the first group, there was a lot of people came, and I ran 3 groups. It was a residential program. We rented a farm. And I ran 3 groups a day for a month, Monday to Friday. At the end of it, everyone but me got sick. Okay? I've never run 3 groups a day again. So the reason I'm putting that, I can have a tendency to run over and over, make things longer, okay? I want to be careful about that. Yeah. So, yeah, because I appreciate the time you put into coming. So let's just end up with our locations and anything else we want to say about today's forum. Yeah, I'm Peter. I'm looking out the window where it's wet and cold here today. And I'm in King's Lynn, which was once, yeah, I divulged myself a bit. I ended up here almost accidentally as a consequence of a divorce. And then I came here to look it over, and I was walking down the street and there was this sign that said Vancouver Butcher. And I looked around and there were all these things about King's Lynn, which were about Vancouver, which was where David was, where my kids lived, where my first son was born. And the links are, King's Lynn was once a very substantial port city, and Captain Vancouver, who navigated what is now British Columbia, was born in King's Lynn. So I've got these sort of connections to Vancouver. Yeah, because Captain Vancouver was born here. Anyway, that's me indulging myself a bit. Do you want to say anything, Nikki, ending up?
Yeah, thanks. Hi. So I'm Nikki, I'm in Wimbledon, London. Really, really interesting hearing everybody else about their, especially people about their material life force. And so I was still sort of trying to work out me about them all. And I think I've come to the conclusion, as I always do, that nothing of mine have changed for ages, and it's really frustrating. And I'm, you know, everything's about feelings and figuring out the psychology of everything. And if I don't do that, I'm completely ineffectual in the material world. And the only, fortunately, I have some amount of material life force and some enough performance that enables me to, you know, I function okay in the ways that I function okay. But I think they've just never changed at all. I'm lucky in the ways I'm lucky, and the things that I can't make myself do, just that's it. It's so annoying. Whereas the caring life force, you know, that was able to change so much. I was able to, after the first 4 years of therapy, it wasn't in pain anymore, a feeling of rejection, and was quickly able to turn it around and contribute from it and get really nourished from it. And yeah, it's just very interesting. Randomly on a separate thing, I don't know why I remembered this. I think Peter talking about Donald Trump and to do with the life forces. I suddenly remembered this book that I still have somewhere that I bought probably in the 80s and definitely in a charity shop, which is a scruffy little book. So that's my material and performance life force right there. But the book was written by Donald Trump, who was just a businessman at the time when must have written it years before then. And it's called The Magic of Thinking Big. And there is a sentence in there that could possibly be the only words of sense that man has ever said. And I really, really tried to bash myself over the head with it and use it somehow. It never worked at all. But what he said was, I figured I'd be thinking anyway, so I might as well be thinking big. I don't know what that's got to do. It's something to do with material life force and him being the president now. And yeah, wasn't necessarily connected up to any talent to anything, was it? Anyhow, that's me. Thank you.
Okay. Cynthia?
Cynthia of Kankakee, Illinois. And I just wanted to say one thing. Peter, you were talking about how you go over. I will say one thing. The time I spend here goes so fast. Even if it goes over, I hardly even notice it. So I thought you might like to know that.
Thank you. That's a definition of the accepted effort when we get to it. Very much. Thank you. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm in Rosarito Beach, Mexico. And I was thinking about Peter's story about a month of groups, 3 groups a day, and kind of holding my head at the thought. And I thought that everyone getting ill, except for Peter, shows you I mean, to me, it made me think Peter was getting the most feelings of accomplishment of any of the group, because he was delivering a service that people presumably were benefiting from, or they wouldn't have stayed the month for 3 groups a day. But he got so much more that he didn't get exhausted ill from his feelings of accomplishment than they did.
Thanks. Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth from Eugene, Oregon. I'm really fascinated by Cynthia's astrological takes. Also, you guys didn't know this because my video was shut off, but I was absolutely cracking up during the "Would you kill Hitler" conversation.
Okay. Stacy?
And I used to think I'd kill him, but I wouldn't kill him anymore, listening to Mr. Avila, Johnny. Yeah, listening to Johnny. And I didn't know he was an artist too. And I take pride, I identify myself as an artist now. And I enjoy these sessions so much. I don't mind that they go over. Okay. So thank you, Peter.
Johnny?
Hello. Well, Peter, I appreciate you being vulnerable right at the end of today's talk of why you did what you did. That's what I needed to hear. I don't know why I needed to hear that, but something in me needed to hear that. So today, my connection to you is actually through Mary, through Solo, you know, and my connection with Mary is, and I can share this with you because I feel comfortable with everyone, was that I believe in past lives. I know it sounds weird, blah, 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 blah. That's why I connected with Mary. And when Mary told me her story, I was like, yeah, Mary, I'm probably the Roman soldier that fought you on that hill. I just like, that was my connection to her. I was like, okay, so I'm going to write this wave out and see where it goes. Everything that you guys said today, every one of you, which is so interesting, I wrote down, this is stuff that I was thinking of this whole week. You've answered so many questions that you don't even know about. My family's from Kings County. This is the God King sword. I've been to King's Landing in London. I'm just a poor farm boy teacher. But I literally was thinking today when I woke up that I was literally, kid you not, thinking of Michelangelo. Like, wow, I'm kind of, because of through the solo writing, I'm uncovering, and that's where I connect with Mary, is I'm learning so much about who I am. And it felt like I was at a block. And every day I'm chipping away that block, and I found out who it is, and it's me. And that the big less, and you're talking, and so there she is, Elizabeth. So my family's Portuguese dairy farmers from Oregon. I have family in Oregon too. So, and these are the connections. And then, so yeah, you're talking about business. So I am that guy who writes everything down. I have goals everywhere. So when you talked about achievement, accomplishments, life force. So I even have why you should pick me, 5 reasons why I should be your leader. Okay. I am literally wearing American shorts. Okay. So I literally was like, we should defund education. And this is why. That was my speech today in my bathroom before this thing started. And I went through the process of why we need, because I listened to the Black Lives Matter thing, and that's where Stace, was it Elizabeth? I'm trying to remember. Elizabeth, you're the one that went out to the protest, right? Or was it Stacy? Yeah, so I finally did it too. So check out my Instagram, because we talked about Malcolm X, and then I posted Malcolm X. Turns out the movie of Malcolm X came after the Rodney King riots. And it was a low budget film, a guy named, what's his name? Denzel Washington. Yeah, so, and it proved that he was explaining, they were retelling the true history of Malcolm X. And anyways, everything that you guys said today, I can go on and on, but like the Michelangelo, I wrote it down. And then Victor, oh my God. So Victor, wow, that's what my dad called me this week. He said, John, because I get into it with my brothers. I have 6 brothers. I'm the 7th son. I get into all my, and I'm always trying to help people. I have a strong, caring life force. But my dad said this. He goes, John, what would you do to make yourself happy? Just do that now. Try, And so when you said, oh man, the brain opened up, it was accepted effort. Oh, and then when you said people just haven't got their accepted effort. That's why you're in jail. Not in jail, but you know what I mean. And then I'm an ENFJ. So and it was Elizabeth. When you opened up, I thought my material life force was low, kind of like Mary's, because I'm more of like, I'd rather just have my freedom. But yeah, I have to pay the bills. I have to do all that. But I never thought, the thing that you got me thinking was material doesn't have to be money. You opened up my perspective, because I lack perspective. And I was like, oh my God, my family are farmers. Oh, they have the highest suicide rate, because when we can't give our life force to people, then what's our purpose? So I'm going to end it at that. But there's just so many great things that came from this. And the truth is, I literally was going to skip it, because I was like, oh, my life is good. I'm okay. And then something in me was like, go to your class. And you can ask Mary, I turned it on a half an hour before. But the big thing I got today, to sum it up for myself, is be the light, but you don't need to have the fire.
Okay, thank you. Victoria?
Wow, that was a passionate ending to today's meeting. So I want to say that I really cherish these times together in this extended family. So I had to start while I was in the city walking home. Now I'm in Paris in my home. And what I'm taking from today, well, many things as well, as John does, but most importantly, probably this poetic rage. I really love it, poetic rage. I think I can relate to it. And yeah, it's nice to have the sense of belonging to this group. So thank you, everybody.
Okay. Vic?
Well, I'm a regular stuck record, because I'm always going to be saying this. I'm deeply touched because you're putting me back in the unit, sitting on one of those cushions. That's what you're all doing for me. And it's shocking, and using the word shocking in a positive sense. I'm telling you, it really is quite something for me. I believe, Peter, you should know that what Cynthia said, I think probably goes for all of us. I will, if you ran on for a long time, none of us would worry too much, but we might have to shut off our videos, because we'd be stuffing stuff in our mouth all the time, because we'd be here for hours. Yeah, I can be choked up just thinking about this, but I can remember, and again, a scene in the activator unit. I remember being in there, and Peter, you can comment on this. I remember 2 things. I got to just throw these out. Got to remember, I was a 22-year-old young hormone-driven man, as well as all the spiritual stuff and everything else, right? And I can remember sitting in the unit, at the side of it, and this fabulously attractive woman walked in, right? Just my eyes fell out, and she walked in, And Dave got up and gave her a kiss, and it was David's daughter. Oh my gosh, he's got a daughter. You know, I didn't know anything about that. Like, Peter probably knows more than I do, you know. But for some reason that came into my mind. And then the other thing is, at one particular point, there was a discussion. It might have been my minister friend, I don't know. There was a little bit of this business about, you know, ultimate purpose, and David had said, you know, the family is an intermediate purpose, and I think there was a bit of resistance to that because some people felt, you know, your family should be your ultimate purpose, blah blah blah. But at one point, either my minister friend or somebody had said something about this. You know, what about your family, or what about family? And David just went like this. He held out his arms about all the people that were there, and he said, "This is my family." All the students, you know, and you just couldn't take that away from this man. You couldn't. It was so strong, you know. There was something so special there about this person, and when you realize where he'd been with those, you know, 2 scars and everything and all that, it gives hope to people, right? And I've been thinking the last week or two, you know, can you imagine? Peter, you know, if David had died, he was only 54. Can you imagine if he'd gone on for another 20 years? They were getting ready to do a lecture tour across Canada. He was going to go across Canada. There's going to be activator units in every major Canadian city, right? And, you know, if this had been taught in high schools, and then I'm going to finish off here in a moment, and that's a promise. but the point being, look at us. There's 10 of us here. And, you know, here and there's obviously some significant differences, right? And yet, can you imagine, we're able to talk and communicate and share and learn something from each other. And this is so desperately needed in the world right now, you know, and I'm very confident that I have different views than some of you do about some of these things. But, you know, at this point, in this context, it doesn't matter. The real question is, and then this comes back to Pellin again, this, you know, the chalk line. What can you deal with? Can you pick up something from this, take, and then do something with it? And then you've mentioned, you know, that this is the Pellin family, and so that's very real to me. And I just want to say it's a real privilege for me, and I'm going through a lot right now with someone I care about, and applying these principles, you know. It means a lot to me to be here. So thank you all. And I look forward to coming again. And there's one more thing I want to say. And you all have my permission to come back at me at this and say, Vic, where is it? And that is, and Peter, you confirm this, and Mary confirmed this, you people don't have David Pellin's poems, his book of poems, A Philosopher Speaks. If you don't have that, that's really significant. Now, I had 2 copies. One I got in the unit from David, and a couple of months after his funeral, I was walking around 4th Avenue. I went to a bookstore, and down in the very, very, very bottom, I got another copy for $1.50, right? And so for years, I had 2 copies. Now, one copy I gave to a relative that I'm not on speaking terms with right now. And the other one I spent, and I told Mary this, I spent maybe an hour, 2 hours out in my shed yesterday, going through all these boxes, trying to find it. And I couldn't find it. And I'm worried. But I want you to know, and this is important, I believe. Pellin's poems, a little booklet of poems, The Philosopher Speaks, were all about the activator philosophy. And if you didn't know the activator philosophy, if you'd picked up this book of poems, you couldn't get much out of it. You know, if you pick up Wordsworth's poems or something, anybody could maybe get something out of it. Pellin's poems, you couldn't get much out of it unless you knew the activator philosophy. So in other words, I'm saying he embedded his philosophy in his poems. And we're talking about 20 to 30 pages with long poems, let's say 4 lines to a stanza, so 8 or 10 or 15 stanzas on a page, all about, like, there's 4 poems I remember. There's 4 poems about the life forces. There's a poem to perfection. There's a poem about understanding. And the preface page, he devotes his, I'm going to tell you right now, he said, people have asked me, have I written these poems, I think it was something like this, for recognition, for money, or for because I wanted to serve people. And he said, the answer is yes to all 3. So that was one thing he said in his preface. And the other thing he said is he's dedicating he said that he personifies his ideal of perfection in the female gender because he doesn't want to confuse himself with perfection. and yet he had a poem about perfection, and I quoted some of it in my article. So please come back at me on that and say, Vic, where is it? Because I think it's pretty important. If the Pellin Institute doesn't have that, I think you need to have that, and I need to have it. So apologize for taking a lot of time, but this is really, really special, and thank you all for sharing from your heart, from your soul, and I'm really grateful and look forward to coming again.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a copy, so find one. I lost mine. So that's important. Shelley, do you want to say something finishing up?
Sure. Hi, I'm Shelley. I'm in Hills, California, and I won't take up much time, but I appreciate the group too, and I appreciate the learning, and I feel supported as a person. You know, so when we started with the coronavirus, there were a lot of reaching out, as Mary knows, you know, Michael Schiffman, he offered something, and other people have offered different types, Alicia Goldstein, a lot of with mindfulness, and I tried it. I tried each of those 1 or 2 times, but it didn't really feel connected for me. It didn't work for me, but this works for me as I'm learning and I'm growing, but I'm also feeling supported as a human being. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you
Excuse me,
all.
Peter. I just wanted to say that Victor's paper is ready to be posted on the website, and he has a little preface that I asked him to do just about his life, just in relation to Pellin. So that'll be in a newsletter that's going to be happening, but I just wanted to give you a heads up so you can see it in its glory on the website.
Okay, thank you, and thank you.
Not yet, but
And-
hopefully by Sunday.
And I just want to say that Mary has been absolutely terrific and wonderfully sensitive in her literary, you know, help with all this. She's been wonderful, and thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I'll see you on Sunday.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody. Thanks,
Thanks
everyone.
for coming.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye,
everyone.
everybody.